got back from something called the Stewardship Kaleidoscope, which is a gathering of people who are all interested in stewardship, either professionals who work in that area of the church's life, like Presbyterian Foundation and the Presbyterian Investment and Loan Group, or people who are interested in learning more about stewardship. I heard two very interesting stories, one of which you will like, one of which you might not like so much. I'll tell you the one that you will like first. There was a woman there whose name is Maggie Lauderer. She's the pastor of a Presbyterian church in Burnsville, North Carolina. And she was telling us mostly a story about how that church had gotten down to 20 members and they were very discouraged about their future. And one day the clerk of session of that church was walking down the street. An Episcopalian friend of his came up to him and said, "I hear you're going to close. I was wondering if you'd sell the building to us Episcopalians." Well, that made the clerk of session mad. And he and the session decided right then that they were going to take the money that they still had in the bank and invest it in such a way so that even if they went down, they would go down fighting. Part of what they did was find the money to call an installed full-time pastor, and Maggie Lauderer is that pastor. The story that she was telling us, and the reason that we're here in front of all this food right now, is about one of the ways that they really involve children in that church, which has gone from the 20 members of 5 years ago to 250 members today. Getting the children very involved has been part of that growth. And so they have something like many churches have, a food pantry, where they invite people to bring food that will then go to a place that distributes it to people who need it. They came up with this idea in that church to use the winsomeness of the children in the church and also to provide more food for the food pantry. So the kids go with adults to a place that sells canned goods, macaroni and cheese, all of those things very inexpensively. They bring those things to church. Every Sunday morning they set up what they call the kids store. The kids sit there and sell those things to people who have forgotten to bring their canned goods from home. They sell out almost every Sunday, and people also donate money to them. So it's been a boon for the food pantry, and it has also gotten the children very involved in the life of their church. I thought that was a story that almost every church could put into practice. Now, the other story I heard is one that you might not be as happy with. That's a story about how we should thank people for making their pledges to the church every year. The story that I heard over and over again at the Stewardship Kaleidoscope was about how churches are now in this century in competition with other nonprofit venues. So the same people who are in your church may also be donating to the zoo and the symphony and the hospital and the Red Cross and on and on and on. And so in some ways we have come to be in competition with them. Now they do a very similar thing to what churches do. They will send out a pledge card, a pledge envelope like this for their church. This happens to be the one that my husband and I filled out for the church where he is the pastor. And you know you may get this with a letter in the mail, and you're supposed to fill it out, tell how much you're going to give in the next year, and then you send it into the church. And you know, in a lot of churches, the members of the church want the amount that they have pledged and the amount that they give to be a secret from their pastor and from almost everybody else in the church. But over and over again, I was reminded about the fact that when you give to the hospital or the symphony or the Red Cross, it's not a secret what you give. If you go to the symphony or other kinds of venues like that in your community, you will probably, in the program, see a list of who has given how much by categories. People don't want to keep it a secret at the symphony. Somebody at the zoo to which you contribute knows how much you have contributed there. When you walk into the hospital, you might see a great big wall full of people's names, all of whom have contributed, and it might even give you some idea about how much they contributed to that hospital. So the other story that I heard was that it's very important for pastors to thank people for their pledges, specifically the amount that they pledged, and it's important for pastors to know how much people have pledged in their churches. I'm not sure that you will be as happy with that story as you might be about the story of the children and their kids' store. But this was really the bottom line of the Stewardship Kaleidoscope gathering. A definition of stewardship, which is sometimes hard for us to come up with. The definition that I heard was, stewardship is everything you do after you say, I believe. So I hope that in your session, in your Sunday school class, in other gatherings with people in your congregation, you will have a conversation about your stewardship as an individual and the stewardship that your church practices, because it is everything that we do after we say, I believe.